I'm not sure that you're would get any kind of real information from that. It could be another test that we could certainly do. Sure, that's not typically done, but that's a good idea.
Well, I wonder if we're fixing the right things as we go forward.
EPA has indicated to us they would like us to isolate the source and to test the air. That's their idea for us to go forward. And I'm sure what you've outlined there could be a science experiment which they would, they gladly involve themselves in, but it's certainly not going to get done in 4 weeks.
And I think what I'd like to add there is that what we're trying to do is a pilot or a test to basically take some rooms, take out the sources. And one of the reasons we're not just isolating the sources, what EPA suggested is we use polyethylene sheeting or something to isolate and run an air sample and see if that is the source of air, is that we do believe we have significant sources with the window caulking, which the unit ventilators, which draw their air right above the windows, is one major source. Secondly is this mastic that's above the ceilings, which is prevalent throughout the school. And the reason we look at that as another major source is we do have air intakes for several rooms that don't draw above windows, and yet the air samples are high there. So it means we have an interior source in the building. So looking at the prevalence of these materials, and there are other materials we found, but they're not in the significant amount of material there. There's very minimal amounts, very minimal amount of PCBs in there. So we're looking at these two large surface areas, significant contributors potentially, and what we're looking at is we're taking these materials out. So we're not just isolating them with poly and testing, we're taking them out, and for two purposes. One, to really see if those are the materials that are contributing, and also to see if they are, what is it going to take to do the work, to see if we can indeed complete this work in a 4-week period, and secondly, what that cost may be. So the pilot is designed more, we can spend a lot of time testing, which we don't have time to do, or we can try doing testing and remediation at the same time and looking at both variables to see if we can accomplish this. And that's what we're really attempting to do here with this pilot project, not just a testing piece. There are potential other sources in the building that may remain, but we are looking at these two major contributors to take those out and see if we can get those concentrations down, and that is the primary goal. Try and get these concentrations down, not at this point eliminating every source or doing a witch hunt to look for every single source of PCBs in the building. There's not the time to do that. If we find more and more sources, we're getting further away from the goal, which is to try and get into the building. And just on the testing, we have been providing tables with information. There has been dates added to some of the tables that have been disseminated publicly, and just also the dates are actually right in the sample numbers. We actually use the date, so if we write 0627, that's the date the sample was collected, so it is there. Okay. But an executive summary is certainly something we can do.
My email is available, and on the 18th of July, I asked that dates be added, and if someone wants to email that to me, that would be great. I'd appreciate it. I did have a question on part of the building, and as we look at this modular opportunity, bringing in some classrooms and putting around the building, have we focused on and I don't know if this would be Dr. Colley or some of the experts that we've brought in, but the cafeteria and the gymnasium, have we made any conclusive decisions on those parts of the building and if they can be separated and utilized? Is there a way to separate them perhaps from the contaminated classrooms so that sports programs may be able to continue regardless of where classes take place? Is the gym going to be opened? Is the gymnasium contaminated?
I honestly, I don't think we've dealt with that question in particular. I mean, if we can find out that additional cleaning, venting, removal of materials that we know contain the PCBs, if we find that that works, we're going to use that approach in all the other areas. We're still going to have to do testing after that has been done, and hopefully, yeah, they'll be able to be used. Are you saying if we have to, let me see if I follow your question. Are you saying if we can't open the building, can we still open the gym and the cafeteria?
And or the cafeteria, yeah, that's exactly what the question is. If part of the building perhaps the decision is made that the the north section of the building where the library is may have levels that are going to take a longer range plan, and we use another third of the building for classrooms. The gym is going to be a central part of activities for middle schoolers, and I think we should concentrate on that. I bring this forward today because although I've asked for a special meeting to be scheduled, I've been told it's not an emergency and that we don't need to have a special school committee meeting. We've had one meeting since July 15th when we were first given this information. That meeting that the school committee had, we were advised questions weren't allowed by the school committee. So we're struggling as a school committee with this emergency. We do need more information. We applaud the work and the quick response that the experts have had, but 4 weeks is a very short window. So I would urge school committee members to get together to decide on a date. Right now, our next scheduled date to meet is in September. I would coordinate our schedules and start to respond and react to this as the leaders of the Westport Community Schools. Thank you.
Okay, and while you're there, I want to make some comments because if you go back to the minutes of the school committees in the last couple of months, we have been making people through the school committee, which is a public meeting, so you can also go back and look at the tapes, which are on the website. You can see that we did say way back in March, I think was when we started, in May, June, all the way into July, as we got some information, we gave information. We said, hey, first we found it on the windows. We said it as soon as we knew. And the next school committee meeting, that was in there. But the next time when we said, hey, we found it in the stuff around the windows, we said it there. We said it again when we found it in the air. And yes, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for me to get the information for us to set up a meeting to then make it published. So we're trying to get the information there. So let's be a little careful about saying the first time we heard it was, a couple of weeks ago. The other thing that I'm going to say in terms of the cafeteria and the gym, my concern is this. If we can't open the building and we decide to go in a different route, and yes, the school committee will have to be part of that decision, and yes, we will have to have additional meetings between now and September, obviously. But we need to have a meeting where we have information to act upon. So when these tests get done and finished, and again, that's not up to us in some ways. In some ways, it's when is the lab going to send us back the information? When are we going to be able to write the report? When is the report going to be ready? Then we set up the meeting. So, give me a little bit of chance to work with them and then bring you into the decision making. But in terms of the cafeteria, and I've talked to Michelle Raposa, who does our nutrition program, if we can't open the building and we have to have the students somewhere else, and it happens to be somewhere in district, sort of speak, we could use high school and elementary facilities to produce the food and shuttle it. We did some of that already when the Macomber had the cafeteria area was not available to us. The gym is a whole different story. I mean, I think it'll be part of the process of cleaning, ventilating, and then seeing if we can bring the levels down. There'll be tests done in there. And if we can lower it enough, could we use those even though the kids are somewhere else? I'm sure we could. We still have to have the management plan from the EPA to even open that part of the building. But it could be one of those things that we look at. Interesting idea. If we can't, can we send the kids to other places to do gym and have basketball practices? I know sometimes some of the league teams use the gyms for, some of the churches have gyms, and, we could try to look for alternative sites for those. So that's my answer for those. Yes?
I have a couple of questions. One, I do need to know if the gym was tested. Has the gym been tested?
From air,
no.
No. Okay. Because there are kids that use the gym that don't go to the Westport school system for recreational sports, and I feel that we need to notify those kids.
It will be part of the testing program once we figure out if we can even open the building.
Right, but those kids were already exposed, so we should test that so that we can, and they've only been exposed in that space because that's the only place that they have.
I can tell you this, 9 chances out of 10, they've been exposed at some level. Because if it's in the building, it's going to be, just walking through the building, you're going to be exposed. How much time? Again, when you take a look at
I'm more concerned about what the level is. If the level in the gym is 300, then it's not an issue. But if the level in the gym is 900, then it's an issue.
Again, but you have to remember, when they put that level in there, they're assuming you're in the space 180 days for 6.5 hours a day. So even if it is 900 or 500, they're only in there for a couple hours twice a week. Not a whole day and not 180 days. So their level of exposure, my guess would be, from just that one sample, from that one place, although I can't be sure because we haven't done the level of testing in that room, is going to be much lower than any kid who's in the building. So.
True, but that, number one, that's your guess, and number two, I think that, because it exposes more of the community to the issue, they might have more of a vested interest in what's going on and the options, and then two, it's really not your decision to make as to whether or not somebody else wants to expose their child to that, that level. But I would just like to suggest that we test the gym.
Not saying that we will test the gym. That is part of it. I'm just saying that we need to be comparing apples to apples.
Right.
So when we're talking about levels, we have to make sure which levels are we talking about and what kind of exposure we think we have.
Right. I do understand, but I'm just saying if the level is minimal, then it's not a risk at all. And I think that would be nice for other people to know who spend an exorbitant amount of time in the gym. And then secondly, I would like to know exactly what is going to be the decision-making process and who is going to be involved, because obviously we all can't be part of the decision-making process, and it's not strictly a financial decision. And I'm wondering, is it going to be just yourself and constituents who are part of the school board? Or is the school committee involved? Are selectmen going to be involved in the decision-making process? Is the financial committee going to be involved? Because obviously we can't, as individuals, all be involved, but perhaps we would like to speak with people who are going to be involved to make our preferences known.
Here's where I would go with that. Obviously, I'm not going to make the decision by myself.
No,
that is not appropriate, nor would I want to do that. We do have the school committee as a body that does those kinds of decisions. Obviously, the selectmen are going to have to be involved and have already put their first foot forward by putting on the special town meeting and scheduling the election. So they're already involved, but their involvement is going to be more at the level of what can we do to provide the mechanism for the community to answer back on funding. For the decision of whether to open or not, when we get the information, I will disseminate it to the school committee, ask them to have a school committee meeting. At that point, it's an open meeting. Okay? So people can come and talk. I would say if you can't come to the meeting, you can always contact the school committee members. You can send me emails. I'll send them off to them as well so they can see what people out there are thinking.
And then the school committee will also make, if the school cannot open,
okay,
the school committee will also make the decision as to which plan to move forward with, which options to move forward with.
I will give them suggestions, which is usually what I do. I'll say, okay, here's what I've thought about. Here's some of what I would recommend. Here's option 1, 2, 3. Here's the